put your hands together for the late morning program with your host, Nam Ross.
Hey,
What's up?
what's up? I'm not gonna shake your hand because I'm sick.
I'm also sick.
This is the Sick Podcast. The Sick Podcast with Nam Ross. Anyways, Jaya Jagannath Prabhu, you don't need any introduction, but thanks for coming on, even though you're sick.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be here, although I'm a little concerned about my level of coherency.
That's okay.
When you're a little sick, you get whooshy.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, anyways, thanks to all our viewers and listeners for listening today. Today's podcast is gonna be an interesting one.
Yeah, I definitely had apprehensions about coming on today for several reasons.
Okay, we can get into that for sure.
Okay.
But I just want to say, you were the first podcast that we ever did.
I was grateful to be back here, and I don't want to sound arrogant because it just doesn't look good, especially when you're trying to build followers. But I think I had like the most views. No, that's meant to be a joke, but
Yeah. No, but you were up there for sure. I mean, people loved what you said, and it was really nice.
it was great. I really we got off to a good start. Looking back at the podcast, you could tell we were a little nervous, and then as we got into it, we felt comfortable.
Definitely. Yeah, that was
a good way to kick off the start of this excellent idea of yours.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So how have you been lately?
Busy. I serve at the Bhakti Center, and there's no dearth of service there.
Nice.
And I've been really focused on developing men's sangha in the Bhakti Center and around. I have started a men's support group dealing with, men's issues that we know what they are. And
Nice.
Maybe we can have a podcast about that in the future.
Of course, definitely. We'll change shirts and do it after this. Speaking of shirts, like my throwback.
What is that Raghu?
That's Raghu. No,
my
that's Shelton.
God,
My
wow.
brother-in-law gave it to me. It's
Really?
like, I don't know how much it's worth, but I'm sure people are sweating it.
Yeah. I'm also started. I kind of like became officially the head of the kind of like the ashram.
Really?
Because we got a few new men moving into the ashram, and I'm kind of already unofficially the big brother of the ashram.
Nice.
So that kind of made it more official.
Nice,
So that
nice.
comes with a whole set of responsibilities, and also responsible for helping develop the wisdom path at the Bhagavad Gita. So super busy. And
Yeah.
Very, very grateful for that also.
Wow, that's really good. I think when you get a certain age, then you like have to take care of people.
Yeah,
There's that
definitely.
need that I definitely felt that way being a father and stuff. Like, I feel like this is what I'm meant to do. Like,
Definitely.
I'm meant to like take care of my family.
Definitely, especially for those who aren't married, then their business is to give back to the society, providing spiritual knowledge. And this is another way it can be done for persons who are coming into the ashram, and you take care of them.
Totally.
Yeah.
And act like a father, a big brother, like that. It's definitely really important. So let's get into it. Let's not dilly-dally anymore. So this podcast is going to be about LGBT issues in ISKCON.
Yes.
Originally I said homosexuality in ISKCON, and someone corrected me. I should use the better phrase, whatever to use for it. And I was like, okay, I'll use that then.
I think that's a minor thing, but whatever.
Yes, it's a minor thing for sure. But let's talk about a few reasons why I wanted to do this and why you agreed to do this.
I think that's most important because there were a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but there were mixed feelings about whether or not we should do the subject matter.
Yes.
What angle of vision we're going to be taking. I think that was a concern.
Yes.
Are we just in it for the clickbait or the politics?
That's definitely not why I'm in. Let's get that straight with people, okay?
Right,
I don't need to do this podcast. There's no reason for me to do it. I don't care to do things like this, like to make myself famous or whatever it is. I do this to help people, and I do this to like open up conversations with people that maybe topics that people don't discuss.
Right.
And I think it's helpful.
Definitely, it would be interesting if you could share it with me. You had mentioned to me there was a Bhakti Rickshaw program that you had attended. And during that program, the topic of homosexuality came up, and there were certain what we'll call as old school views.
Yes.
Which doesn't mean they're wrong or anything, but just in sort of old school view presentation of it, which was a little bit perhaps I don't know, disturbing or concerning maybe for Tulsa or
yeah.
And that brought you to me the next day and like, Jaya, I want to do a podcast on this. So if you could share
Sure, yeah. Thank you.
What was spoken or
definitely. So I was at a program, and it was kind of an open question program with a senior Vaishnav in our community, and the topic of homosexuality came up, and they said, well, how do they fit in ISKCON? And I was like, oh man, here we go. And I was like looking at Tulsi as well. So the devotee who I have the utmost respect for and love very much, who comes from a certain time, a certain age, old age, older time, said everything by the book, what Prabhupada says in the Bhagavatam.
Which doesn't at all, the age doesn't discount anything that's being said. Also, just throwing that out there.
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, just that what was said is coming from a certain time period and stuff. What was said was basically, it's a choice, and it's something wrong with someone, and it's unnatural, blah blah blah, which may or may not be true according to the Bhagavatam, but it was kind of said where it's like they should just kind of give it up and join the rest of us regular people.
Like, stop, become normal.
Give it up. It's like if you're drinking coffee or something, like, please give up coffee and join the rest of the devotees who aren't drinking coffee. So this alarmed me to a certain extent, but I'm the type of person is like, I'm not confrontational in like a group of devotees, like, but Tulsi was like, hold on a second. And I was like, just let it go, like, and she was asking more. She wasn't rude or anything, but she was just asking more deeper questions about it, and the devotee wasn't able to really answer them satisfactorily. So then I was just like, and all the other devotees who were in the group who were like newer and stuff, they were just like super confused, like more and more confused.
Were they young?
Relatively young, like had just come around 5-10 years, and young families and stuff.
Are they? I guess I meant, were they young in age? Because that also makes a difference.
Some of them were,
because those of us who are younger, we've kind of been socialized in a particular way that makes us, let's say, more accepting of these sorts of things. And the older generation was not socialized in the same way.
Some of them were younger.
That makes it.
Some of them were younger, and they were like, whenever Tulsi was saying something, they were like, "Yeah, what about that? What about that?" Yeah. Right. So the older devotees, older meaning like maybe a little 10 years older than us.
Right.
They were just like kind of confused and didn't really know what to think. Anyways, but then that prompted me the next day to be like, "Hey, Jay, we have to do a podcast on this topic, because it's like, let's talk facts." What did Prabhupada actually say? How did he act as a, there was, like you were saying, his acharya kind of persona and his like persona. Right. So that's what kind of prompted me, and I thought, and I know in recent times, like, devotees have said, do you really want to talk about this?
Right.
Like, do you want to get into this?
Right.
And let's hear like what you thought when someone was like, listen, where angels fear to tread, the fools rush in where angels fear to tread kind of thing. Like, that's why no one's ever talked about this. No senior devotees talk about this so much.
Right.
ISKCON has not made any formal statement on this subject.
Right. Yeah, I think, well, for starters, just in case anyone's curious, the reason why Nam came to me, for two reasons. Reason number one is I have same-sex attraction. Reason number two is, which you knew about as friends. And then reason number two is I'm viewed as having a certain level of Shastric competency.
Exactly. Also, you've discussed this stuff before. I've seen on Facebook and things like that.
Briefly. Of course, I haven't gotten too much into this particular subject matter. Right. But so that was why you felt you wanted to come to me, for those particular reasons. I think what I like to say on the outset, one thing I want to establish, because I may be using this language later on, is that there tends to be a first party, second party, and third party perspective on these issues. And what I mean by first party perspective is someone has same-sex attraction. So they're having that experience and on a very visceral level. The second party perspective is they don't have that attraction or that particular conditioning, but there's someone who's very dear to them is having that conditioning. And this second party perspective can also include those who are kind of politically informed in a certain way, and by empathy they kind of identify with what is viewed as now the downtrodden or victim class of persons, and therefore they want to be the voice for the voiceless. They kind of also fall into this second party perspective. These first party and second party persons, because for them it's very subjective or emotional, and so their vision of the subject matter tends to be primarily or often informed by a lot of emotional attachment, the ego, ahankara vimudatma. We're kind of attached in that particular way. And then you have what I call as a third party perspective, where you don't have that particular psychological conditioning, nor are you having anyone dear to you like that, and therefore you're very and there's a certain sense of objectivity to that perspective, because you're not emotionally invested in any relationship or have yourself having that experience. And also the perspectives of such third party persons can also come off as callous. I can imagine that, this devotee who was speaking at the Bhakti Riksha was such a person with a third party perspective.
Definitely.
And therefore, there's maybe a certain level of objectivity, at least in their mind, and kind of no emotional investment. So they just lay it down. This is what Prabhupada said. This is what it is. Bas. So most of the conversation, and this is all happening in the conventional realm. So there's a first or second party perspective kind of versus this third party perspective, and the two clash on a regular basis. I feel that we have also what I would call as a fourth party perspective, or we can use the word turiya. This word turiya comes up in our literatures oftentimes to refer to the transcendence. There's the world of three dimensions, or the world of the three modes, and then there's the turiya, the fourth dimension, which is the transcendence, which is Krishna. So there's a fourth party perspective also, and trying to...
Let me just move this like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And trying to understand these particular issues. And the fourth party perspective is more basically based on Shastra. That it has to be, for devotees, it has to be the primary, the primary, what's the word I'm looking, element that informs our view on these subject matters and how are we to deal with those subject matters in a healthy way for our present devotees. I feel when it comes to this conversation, that turiya or that fourth party perspective is not so much considered. And I think there are reasons for that also. One reason, we'll get into this later, is that the shastras that we deal with, at least, are mostly silent about this particular issue. They're not like, say some of the Middle Eastern traditions and their literatures, which have very, fatal suggestions for what you should do with persons with this sort of conditioning. The Bhagavatam is Srimad Bhagavatam Purana Amalamya Vaishnavanam Priyam. It is Amala Purana. It is dealing with pure subject matter. And they're not so much concerned with the mundane world, such as the world of sexuality isn't a preoccupation at all of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so because the Bhagavatam is the primary source of authority for whatever we speak and the direction of our life, if you have a scripture that's mostly silent about an issue, you can't really speak authoritatively about it. But you can present our certain intuitions based on the general principles that you've understood from the Bhagavatam. But it'd be a little bit hard to present something authoritative because the Shastra that informs your authority is silent on the issue. So for that reason, devotees don't normally take at least in my observation of it, a fourth dimension or fourth person perspective on these issues. They're either on one side or the other, and then this fighting goes on incessantly and doesn't stop. So anyway, I wanted to throw it out there because this might be language that I will use in the future. First party, second party, third party.
Did you make that up?
Yeah, I mean, kind of just in my thinking about it.
It's good. I think it's good to break it up like that. Yeah.
So just to answer your question, though, how did I feel about getting these sort of mixed feelings, some of which were being directly sent to me?
Yes.
I was like, I understood where they were coming from. And primarily where they're coming from is that, let's talk about Krishna consciousness. Why do we have to talk about these issues? one of the comments that were made, which was very true, is that these are relative issues by nature of being relative. They're inconclusive. They're always changing.
Yes.
And therefore, I don't think the purpose of this podcast is to present something conclusive. It's not to present something conclusive, but rather to just open up a conversation. And why is such a conversation important for our community? I don't know. I don't want to exalt it to like this is being very important for our community, right. But it's important enough because we do have devotees in our movement who are sincere, who live a lifestyle of devotion and not the gay lifestyle, because that's another thing that comes up with this sort of subject matter. As soon as you say gay, it immediately conflated with a lifestyle, the gay lifestyle, which is, more or less, as it is presented to the public, not a very nice lifestyle, just to say it nicely. I may use other words in the future, so brace yourself. But the two are often conflated, and not realizing that the two are actually separate. So you can have a certain psychological conditioning, but you have a lifestyle of a devotee. And so here are devotees in our movement with that psychology, and I'm thinking specifically of young persons, many of whom I know, who they feel obliged to dissimulate that psychology because they feel that there's no place for them. There's a certain shame around just being conditioned that way. It doesn't mean you don't even have to do anything. Like on a personal level, I've never had a relationship of any kind. But that didn't stop the bullies from kicking my ass when I was growing up. You didn't have to do anything. Just that if they had the intuition that you had that psychology, that was enough to be isolated from the community. Like, right. You're the weirdo, you're not one of us, and so on. So the importance of the conversation in this sense is that this is an actual swabhava or upadi that does come up. It's not just a choice as such. I don't think anyone would be so foolish as to make a choice that would ostracize them or alienate them. Cause them to feel shame up to the point of wanting to commit suicide. No one chooses that if they can help it. Right. But if they're actually psychologically wired that way, then there's a certain psychological inevitability that comes with that wiring. And if that's shamed and ridiculed and so on, then such devotees, I'm talking about devotees in our movement, will be alienated from the general mass of devotees. They'll probably live in like seclusion or alienate themselves. And then that either leads to them leaving Krishna consciousness, or it may lead them to trying other unhealthy approaches, like, okay, I'm gonna try marrying a woman or marrying a man, as it were, if it's the other way around, which could be a strategy, but in my observation, that's not a strategy that's worked well for those that I know who have tried that. Yeah, right. Not only do you perhaps ruin your own life, but you ruin the lives of your wife who didn't know. And she has to come home and find out something crazy, or if you have children, so that may not be good. But then you're forcing people into these strategies that may not work because they're deemed not fit or not good enough to just exist in the way that they're conditioned, and just from there make spiritual advancement and improve. Yeah. So for that reason, the conversation becomes important. And if anything, for devotees who already have their stance this way or that way, because that was a comment that was made, so you're not going to change your opinion. That's true, and nor are we looking to change the opinion of anyone in that sense. But we could at least offer perhaps a palliative to those devotees, which are probably more in number than we think, that who have to dissimulate their identity because of fear or whatever it may be. This conversation could be the beginning of one that offers a palliative, like, there is a place for me, just on the basis of scripture, there is a place for me in Christian consciousness. And I don't want to convey that those who have a third-party perspective don't convey that, but just in my own personal experience, that those who have a third-party perspective aren't always good at conveying that with the sort of rhetoric that they use. They usually tend to convey something that makes one feel alienated or isolated and like hopeless and useless. And
there's I've heard of a number of devotees who have wanted to, either take initiation or do service or something, and approaching some managers or senior devotees, and the senior devotee is not able to give good answers or not being able to accommodate them.
I've had that experience, not on a personal level, but in Chicago there was a gay couple that started coming, and they were inspired by a particular leader that would regularly come to Chicago. So they started following for regular principles, chanting 16 rounds. They were like really getting into the Krishna conscious format.
Yeah.
And they went to this senior devotee that they were inspired by, and they wanted to talk about this particular issue because it obviously impacted them. Like, what does that mean for initiation? And that senior devotee just didn't want to talk about it whatsoever, like at all.
What just said?
I don't want to talk about it. Like literally said, I don't want to talk about it.
Wow.
And the end. That was just the end of it. And then this couple, one came to me and they were asking like, well, I went to this devotee and I said, well, what did they say? They said, I don't want to talk about it. And I was like, okay, did they say anything further after that? Like, he said, nope, that was the end of the conversation. I was like, wow, it's kind of tough. Yeah. And at the time, that particular devotee didn't, think much of it. Of course, later on, they just ended up leaving, going back to some other lifestyle. Yeah, and I don't want to convey the idea that they left because of that particular exchange, but basically, it communicated that there isn't really a space for me in the Hare Krishna movement. So I remember kind of giving a voice to these devotees. I met this devotee personally. And maybe this is something I would like to bring up later on. I'll bring it up now. I personally don't think it's wise or prudent to build your self-worth around your identity. I'm gay or I'm straight. That's foolishness in my view. Building your identity around what you're attracted to sexually is it's a pretty base, like below the belt way of identifying. And it's kind of reductive. The soul is much more glorious in its body. So just by thinking you're the body, you've already reduced yourself to a bag of pus, urine, and stool. And then within that category, you reduce yourself further. It just doesn't seem very wise. So on a personal level, I've never had like what is now the coming out story. If you go to YouTube, you can type in coming out stories and you have all these the beautiful sad music in the background. It was I don't really identify with that. Oh yeah, I didn't know that. So it's like a very popular, you should come out, there should be representation so you can help give voice to other people. And don't get me wrong, I see the value in that. For again, even like this conversation is one such, it's a similar sort of thing, giving voice to maybe. Yeah. So I get that, but I don't see it as being prudent to build your identity around that. You build your identity around, especially as a devotee, around your Krishna consciousness. You build your self-worth around being a devotee of Krishna. Yeah. That is the secret of all secrets in the Bhagavad Gita. You build your identity around that. On a personal level, I wanted to build my identity around being a kirtaniya, being someone who's really into Shastra, someone who really likes Bhagavatam. And by and large, most people know me like that, as someone who's into Bhagavad, not just as the gay devotee, that's just the gay devotee, and then you can be kind of dismissed on those bases. So anyway, the reason I say all of that is to say that it wasn't like people knew exactly, and then maybe some people had an intuition, but most people didn't know because I didn't build my identity around that. So I met this senior devotee and was like, well, I had a few questions for them. What if this couple is sincere? They're chanting, 16 rounds, falling for regs. They're viable members of the community. Yeah. As far as our basic standards of Krishna consciousness is concerned, will they be allowed to give classes in the future as they're learning more? Will they be allowed to go on the altar and cook and, like these sorts of questions I was asking. Yeah. And the answer was just like this, like deafening silence, like. Like, and then and you kind of, and then during the course of the conversation, it was just like, yeah, I don't really know if that's even wise, and I kind of get that side of the story also, because if you say yes, then it appears that you're advocating for something that Prabhupada seemed to be deliberately against. So you can't just say yes, but if you say no, you look like a jerk. Like, because it's like they're following all the basic standards of anyone else, and you're saying no just because they're conditioned a particular way. So it's like, okay, I won't say anything, but I don't know if that would be wise. That was sort of, so I was like, well, ta-da. I remember mailing the senior devotee, and it was like, you could kind of see it's like kind of like a oh shit moment. Like, okay, well, let's just adjourn this conversation. Like, we'll not
look over there.
So I remember trying to represent and not represent so much, but I guess give voice to these devotees.
Yeah.
And I did the best I could, of course, but it's a complicated issue as far as our community is concerned.
Like, imagine that that's just one experience that you've had.
Yeah.
Like, this probably going on in many places as we grow in our society and bring in more, people and distribute books and do programs and stuff. You're going to come across this again
and again,
dear senior devotees. You will come across this again. So we need to understand what is going to be said to these people, what the policy is, blah blah blah. It's if any GBC or any managers are watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, we should start discussing this.
Yeah, and I had, after this exchange with this devotee, I was later on invited to a small group of devotees who were trying to come out with an official statement with how to view this particular issue.
Really?
I don't think it came out. I don't know of any such official
What kind of group of
statement.
devotees?
Like if I say the positions, then it'll become obvious. But GB, some of them were. It was headed by a GBC.
That's huge.
Yeah,
That's
huge.
big.
Yeah, it was headed by a GBC, and then 3 other devotees who were, I guess, selected by the GBC to come out with an official statement.
Wow.
About it. I don't think it ever came out, but when I was brought on temporarily, I was literally on for 2 weeks, and I was just like, oh, this is not my thing. I'm out, because it was kind of like, we respect all souls. We say souls are not there, but I like kind of the rhetoric that we would give as devotees, which made like perfect sense, and it creates a sort of sense of like whatever inclusivity and acceptance and so on. And then at the very end, but marriage is between a man and a woman, and it was like a few of those statements, which by the way I agree with, and we can get to that later.
We'll get to that after.
Yeah, and the concluding statement was just like we accept you, but still, there isn't that much place for you. Like, that's, at least experientially, that's kind of what I remember it being conveyed to me. So I remember objecting to, I was like, this doesn't seem, and I wrote my objections to these devotees.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, we have to look at this, and that was kind of the end of that. So it's important. Obviously, our devotees don't have a clarity. Our devotees means our leaders who would have to deal with things like initiation, all these things in the future, don't seem to have at least a unified voice. I think individuals have a certain clarity about it for sure, but don't have a unified voice of how we're to look at this as a community. And so, okay, fine, but then that does leave a whole sector of your constituency bewildered. And especially, it's one thing if there's like a section of your constituency who's joining from outside in, they've kind of already probably dealt with a lot of the hard work of like self-worth and acceptance. They probably have a whole support system, maybe or maybe not, of persons who accept them and they're coming in. When we're talking about devotees who are born in the movement and they have to come upon such a discovery themselves, then for them, it's like, where is the place for me? And it seems that it will be prudent for the society to come up with some level of clarity for how we might communicate this. I have my suggestions that I could offer in the future.
Let's step back a little, and for those who don't know, because I know a lot of young devotees listen to this and watch this, they might not be aware of what Srila Prabhupada has said, and I think that's a point of where kind of devotees who say certain things about the subject, they say, well, Prabhupada said this and he wrote that and this. So I know you're very Shastric and everything. So let's unpack that a little.
Yeah, I have a few points about that. I think
so he writes about it in the Bhagavatam.
He writes about it in one place in the Bhagavatam.
One place.
Okay. And then the rest of the statements that you can find are either from letters or maybe room conversations or morning walks.
Right. Okay.
So it'd be prudent to go what he writes in the Bhagavatam first.
Right. Because why?
Because Shastra is the basis of our authority. As Prabhupada himself writes, you can check it out in CC Madhya Lila chapter 20 verse number 352, the purport. I like to bring up this purport. You gotta have your Prabhupada sets. And Prabhupada says that he quotes Narottam Das Thakur saying Guru Sadhu Shastra is the basis of our authority. And then he says, but Shastra is the center for all. That a guru is to be accepted as genuine if he speaks the Shastra. And the sadhu is to be accepted as genuine if he speaks the Shastra. He says both guru and sadhu, then he just kind of underscores that both guru and sadhu are to be accepted if they speak Shastra. But unfortunately, Prabhupada writes, people do not quote the Shastra.
Really?
Yeah, that's a very
interesting.
I purport a lot. So Shastra is really the first place that you want to start with an issue like this.
And also, when you say Prabhupada said, it, there's the kind of levels of the authority of basically, okay, the books are the kind of like the guideline, and that's like kind of set in stone. It was meant for everyone to read, and it was meant for all
time and place.
Exactly. But then when you get into letters and you get into conversations, those are to certain people at a certain time.
Right. With a certain context, a certain situation.
So it's easy to cherry pick letters and conversations. Prabhupada said this about women. Prabhupada said this about black people. He said this about, this, whatever.
Of course, with this particular issue and others like it, because of the level of consistency of Prabhupada's thoughts, if you look at any letter where this has come up, he has a very consistent thread of thoughts.
That's good. That's clean.
Right. Then it becomes like, okay, Prabhupada had this feeling or this thought about this particular.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that before you get into it.
Yes. Still, having said that, our Pramanam Tattva is that the Bhagavatam is the authority for our thinking and our action. And so whatever you're going to, if you're trying to present a subject matter authoritatively, then you have to make reference to the Bhagavatam. So that's where you find the first kind of dilemma in a sense, because as I mentioned earlier, that the Bhagavatam itself is silent on these types of issues for the most part. It is Amala Purana. It deals with the pure subject matter. Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu Shivadam Tapatrinyam Umulanam. It deals with the Veda, Vastava Veda, the truly abiding substance, Vastava Vastu, as opposed to the Avastava Vastu, which is the material world of Maya, which also exists, but it exists here, it's here today and gone tomorrow. So the Bhagavatam is Vastava Vastu, is dealing with that particular substance, which is Shivadam. It gives prema, and Tapatraya Umulanam, it removes the threefold miseries. So that's what the Bhagavatam is squarely focused on. Dharma Projita Kaitava Atra Paramonirmasaranam Satam. It deals with the Paradharma. All cheating religion has been kicked out of this. So if you don't like that, this ain't your book. Bhagavatam is just being very upfront with you. To kick it out, to kick out Kaitava Dharma is to say that we're going to criticize it like a lot. So if you don't like to hear that, if you're one of those guys that's like to hear everything is beautiful and everything is equal, then you ain't gonna like this book. So this is the first kind of, I would say, dilemma that you encounter, is that because the Bhagavatam is so squarely focused on the Vastava Vastu, the truly abiding substance, the eternal reality, it's not caring about these sorts of issues at all, which I imagine, I don't know, I have never read the Vedas, but I imagine some of this stuff might come in the Vedic literatures, which deals with three modes of nature. Like Krishna says in the Gita, what is that? Trigunya
Vishaya Veda Nistar Gunya Bhavarjuna. You're done well, Atmavan, something.
Yeah.
I have some flashcards I've been reading.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Ashlokas flashcards. So I can quote something and be like, look.
So most of the literatures of the Vedas deal with the three modes, the three gunas.
Right.
So I imagine that certain subject matters would probably come up in those literatures. But Krishna, in the context of which this verse is appearing also, Krishna is speaking about the Vedic literatures that kind of deals with the conventional world pejoratively. Bhogaishwarya Pasaktanam Taya Aprahita Chaitasam and so on. So Krishna is actually kind of disparaging those literatures and telling Arjuna, Nishtraya Gonya Bhavarjuna, you come up to the transcendental literatures.
Right.
I mean, and so in the Bhagavatam is the Nigama Kalpaturu Galitam Palam, the topmost of all the Vedic, the cream of the Vedic literatures. So saying all that, the point is to say that their concern is not with the mundane world, certainly not the mundane world of sexuality, which is very just base and mundane.
Yes.
And therefore, you wouldn't expect to find much about that in the Bhagavatam, and indeed you don't. It's quite silent on that issue. And therefore, you can't really quote the Bhagavatam to establish the authority. Having said that, on the other hand, it is obvious what Vedanta thinks about sex life generically. And from that generic understanding of how the Vedas or Vedanta view sex life, you can understand how they would view something like homosexuality. And so when devotees have certain strong statements about it, for me, it kind of makes sense. Just following the general, and if you know what Vedanta says about sex life, it being the rope that ties you to the world of the gunas.
Right.
Janasha moho yamahamameti. How's the first line that go? Pum sastriyaya. Maituni bhava metan. Toyomita hridaya granthi ahu. And then
Hridaya Granthi, yeah.
So with that, even with that, you can intuit how they would view something like homosexuality, at least the sexual part of homosexuality. And I'll get to that later. It's not going to be very positive. It's already sex itself is binding, but at least in a heterosexual template, your sex life can be used as yagya for the society and for the Supreme Lord, whereas something outside of that context is not even possible. So therefore, when devotees come down a little bit harsh, especially about the sex part of homosexuality, it kind of makes sense. And so devotees with a first or second party perspective, they should appreciate Vedanta's view on sex life is like, this is very problematic, just generically speaking, and then what to speak of this on the one hand. Okay, having said all these things,
yes,
Prabhupada, so the Bhagavatam is silent on the issue. So there's one section of the Bhagavatam that's talking about the Visarga. There are 10 subject matters of the Bhagavatam. Sarga means the primary creation. Visarga means the creation done by Lord Brahma. So there's a section of the Bhagavatam that's describing Visarga, the creation done by Lord Brahma.
Right.
And in one of them, he creates these Asuras, basically, these demons, I think from his back or something. You remember? Anyway, I got the verse right here.
Yep.
So here's a verse. So it says, Lord Brahma approaching the Lord addressed him thus. So he creates these Asuras, I think from his backside, and then they begin chasing him for sex life. So Brahma takes off running, naturally.
Oh my God!
And I guess they're gaining pace on him or something. So he prays to the Supreme Lord.
Right. And
so he offers this prayer: My Lord, please protect me from these sinful demons, who were created by me under your order. They are infuriated by an appetite for sex and have come to attack me. So Prabhupada writes here, this is the only statement that you'll find in the Bhagavatam where this is coming up, as far as I know at least. It appears here. This is third canto, chapter 20, verse number 26.
3:20:26, or whoever's interested.
Right. So Prabhupada writes here, in no unclear language. Well, it appears here, that already makes it a little bit funny, but it appears here that the homosexual appetite of males, which is interesting because they're saying LGBT, but this is only Prabhupada saying males, so it kind of excludes the ladies out there who may be having with same-sex attraction. It appears here that the homosexual appetite of males for each other is created in this episode of the creation of the demons by Brahma. In other words, the homosexual appetite of a man for another man is demonic and is not for any sane male in the ordinary course of life. So how does someone like me or someone who's having same-sex attraction, how do they process something like this? Well, probably very poorly. In the beginning, especially, again, if you don't have a fourth party perspective and you're very much centered in your first person, second person perspectives, then you're going to have a hard time with this. I never had a hard time with this at all, but I could see how someone who's really attached to their upadi and the sort of perspectives that come with that attachment.
What's the meaning of upadi?
Upadi means like a false designation, the designation of the body.
Yeah.
Or I may use another word also, swabhava, a certain conditioning, psychological conditioning. Heterosexual. I've been using this word conditioning. I know some people like, you make it sound like we have a disease. But it is a psychological conditioning. Heterosexuality is also a psychological conditioning.
Right.
And homosexuality is also. So for those of you who are concerned about you're making it sound like a disease, it is a disease. It is a disease of identifying with a material body, also called as asmita or avidya or maya, just to be frank. It's all illusion. Or swabhava. And these swabhava, they're very difficult to give up. On my Instagram, Urban Sage Deliberates, just in case anyone wants to know.
We'll get you after.
I'm joking. Yeah. So on Janavi and I, in this context, I think it's okay. We did a little. I was inspired to use this little thumb piano thing, a kalimba it's called, or anyway. And we were singing these prayers of Kaliya, Kali offers prayers to Krishna.
Yeah.
After he gets that butt whooping, his wives first offer prayers. At first, they're like, yeah, kill him. We don't need him. And then they say, wait a minute, how does he get the mercy of Krishna's feet on his head? So they're like, wait a minute, he must be a great Vaishnava who's done amazing austerities. So they pray for him, and Krishna releases Kali, and then Kali offers his own prayers. And I've always liked these prayers so much. I can relate to it. But in the first of the prayers, the theme of the whole prayers is like this. Vayam kala sahopatya tamasa dirgamanava. So he says, from our very birth, sahopatya, from the very beginning of our birth, tamasa dirgamanava, we the snakes, are tamasa, in the mode of ignorance, dirgamanava, and enraged by like anger and envy. Swabhava dustajonata. Oh Lord, it is very difficult to give up this swabhava, right? Like, swabhava or upadi, these falsehoods, it's very difficult to give it up. Loka nam yadasagraha, by which one identifies with asat, the material energy. So whether you're having this psychological or that, it's very, very difficult to give that up. No matter how much you criticize, you can be shamed. Like Prabhupada said some pretty savage things when it comes to talking about like genitalia, and it's just a urinal, and all the statements, we've heard it many times as brahmacharis as well. That didn't stop nobody from being attracted. Right. To say it frankly, because the swabhava acts very powerfully, and the prayers of Kali really expressed that. I really liked those prayers.
Oh, it's really nice.
So anyway, when you have that conditioning, it's there. So here you have Prabhupada saying that this is the homosexual appetite of a man for another man is demonic, and is not for any sane man in the ordinary course of life. So how does someone who identifies with that swabhava very intimately to process something like this?
Yeah.
If you don't have a fourth party perspective, the perspective of the scripture, then you're going to probably have a hard time with this because of the emotions that are tied to that upadi and your identification with it. For me, when I was reading it, I think on the one hand, for the third party persons who were really like, who kind of feel invigorated to like mention something like this in this sort of conversation, like, Prabhupada said here, and it's in the Bhagavatam, is to say, hey, the section of the Bhagavatam is not a commentary about homosexuality. It's talking about the Visarga. And later on, I don't want to problematize Prabhupada's statement, but Prabhupada says it appears here. Well, I'm like, why does he say it appears? Because later on, Brahma discards this body, and the body becomes the twilight. And the twilight is imagined to be a woman by these demonic sons of his. So the twilight was not actually a woman. It was just a twilight, but it was imagined to be a woman by the Asuras that he created. So if they were homosexuals in the way that we think of the term today, then why were they imagining the twilight as a woman?
Right.
And if you read Prabhupada's future purports on this subject matter, he's just talking about sex life in a very broad sense, and how the sexual appetite is very degrading if you read the future comments. Right. So it appears, for me, it seems like Prabhupada saying it appears because later on in Twilight is not a man. They don't imagine it in a man, they imagine it in a woman. So the subject matter is not homosexuality. The word for homosexual does not come up anywhere. Prabhupada has mentioned this point here, but he doesn't quote any scripture to underscore his point about homosexuality being demonic. That doesn't mean it's wrong, and I'm going to get to that side also. But just if I'm speaking to the persons with a third-party perspective, I just like, you have to have that appreciation that the subject matter is not homosexuality. This passage is not a commentary on homosexuality. The word for homosexual doesn't appear anywhere. The twilight that they saw later on was imagined to be a woman, so they certainly weren't homosexuals in a generic sense. So you can't really quote this as an authority of the Bhagavatam dealing with the subject matter comprehensively. Even if somehow or other you want to imagine this as being the subject matter of homosexuality, it's hardly dealing with it comprehensively. Like, for example, suppose I just tell you that your way of being is demonic. Okay, that, like, fine, I can, but that's not where does it come from? And more importantly, what do I do with it? It's there. That's not all discussed in this section about, because that's not the subject matter of the Bhagavatam in this section. Right. Nevertheless, to our first and second party persons, I think it should also be appreciated that Prabhupada's statement in its own right, for at least to me, makes perfect sense. Like, I never thought that it didn't make sense. And in the sense of what is the demon in the Vedic, of course the word demonic is somewhat Because when we think of demons, we think of bat wings and, witches like cutting shit. Because we watch way too many movies and we have a certain vision of what a demon is. But the demons in Vedic culture, they look good. They were smart, like
handsome.
anything.
Hiranyakashipu was handsome.
And super.
That's why I played him in the drama. They always ask me. No, I'm just kidding.
And also super intelligent. They knew Vedic literature, but they just didn't follow it.
Right.
When we read the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita and Prabhupada's conclusion about that whole chapter, what is the difference between a demon and a devata, Asura and an Asura? You remember the conclusion from 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita?
That one follows the Shastra and
one doesn't. That's the difference.
Bam! I'm 2 for 2 today.
So when you look at a demon in terms of this context, an Asura is one whose life activities are not informed by the Shastra.
Right.
And certainly when it comes
to everyone.
So it's pretty far-reaching. I think for those persons who have, especially for those who have a first-party experience, I think for them this is the point that's the most triggering. Like, listen, if you were to say it just like that, like we're all in the Asura category, then everyone will be down with that. Like, okay, cool. It's like kind of fair and equal. But usually what happens is like you're a demon and we're okay.
Yeah.
Even though we did just get caught with our head in the cookie jar just the other day, we're still okay because we're normal.
Yeah.
And you're not okay because you're not normal. Even if you didn't put your hand in a cookie jar, you're still not normal because you have this particular conditioning. And I think that's where a lot of persons with first-party experience get kind of upset and bewildered. Like, why the double standard in our community? But still, even if you want to kind of equalize the playing field, which I don't think is a good approach if you're having a first-party experience or second-party experience, try to create a social movement within ISKCON. Try to say it's all equal. It's all really the same thing. That's also, in my view, total bullshit. It's not really proper knowledge either. You could say, at best, maybe there's a spectrum of demonic behavior that goes on, but it's still not the same. And looking at the statement in its own right, as an Asura is someone whose life's activities is not informed by scripture, and not only that, it's informed by Rajagun primarily. And one of the symptoms of Rajagun is kama, just like a desire, but in this case, just a desire for sex life. Now, in Vedic culture, and this is my understanding, it can be corrected by those who are more learned than myself who may be watching this. But if you read Bhagavad Gita, when he talks about the cycle of yagya, right? There's God, and from God comes the Vedas. From Vedas comes Dharma, and for every duty there are prescribed yagyas or sacrifices required to see to the successful fulfillment of that duty. Only after that there is enjoyment. So I like to say it like this when I'm trying to communicate the subject matter in the best way I can without triggering hella people, that in Vedic culture, sex life, or not sex life is the epitome of enjoyment, but enjoyment in general should be preceded by and proceeded by responsibility. That's the way I like to convey it. Preceded by responsibility means marriage when it comes to the sex desire. And proceeded by responsibility means children. As far as these old cultures are concerned, that's just the general understanding. So if you have the enjoyment part without the responsibility before or after, then you're called as an Asura. That's a demonic activity. You may yourself not be that. You're a pure spirit soul. But you're acting as a demon because you don't do the responsible part before in the form of marriage, and you don't do the responsible part after. So when I look at a statement like this, and especially when I look at the culture of what's become identified as LGBT culture today, where it's all about the sex part and not about the responsibility before, not about the responsibility after, it's demonic activity for sure. And if anyone were to take an honest look at these communities today, and there may be different theories of why they've become that way, and I'm not getting into all that. Those theories may or may not be true. But as it stands today, that you can see it if you go to Pride Parade, which I've been one time and I was absolutely appalled. If you go to these sorts of things, you can see that the culture it's demonic. It would be considered very wrong to bring your child to a strip joint, like an 11, like suppose Gaura Chandra turns 11 and you bring him to a strip joint.
Oh my God, don't say that.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I'm worried about him.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
He's really handsome.
Anyway, so that's obviously would be just irresponsible behavior on a good father and mother. But the same child, if you bring him to the Pride Parade, you're considered progressive.
Really?
And, for the at least from the things that I've seen over.
But that's not. Is it the same as a strip club?
You've never been to a pride parade, obviously.
No, I haven't. But I think I was walking
around.
by once.
If you go to a pride parade, you can see for yourself. And I'm not the only one who shares this opinion. You can talk to many LGBT persons who can speak honestly about these things and not be so infatuated with their particular identity.
Right.
It's demonic activity. People walking around with their clothes off fully, practically having sex life in the open as an expression of their freedom and their normalness. And I was always just like, bro, if you want people to accept you as normal, you gotta act normal. It's not normal to walk around, you know. Anyway, so if you've ever been to a pride parade, you can see this sort of activity going on. And for me, what was the most astonishing thing about the one pride parade that I've been to is there's tons of children there. The parents taking it's probably like going to the circus. You bring your kids and it's glorified.
My dad used to take me to the circus.
So my point is that there's something to Prabhupada's statement. It can't just be dismissed. If you're having a first party or second party view of these issues, it can't just be dismissed what Prabhupada is saying in its own right. Like if this sentence was just a standalone sentence, for me it still makes sense. That enjoyment should be preceded by responsibility.
I like that point.
In Vedic culture, that means dharma and yajna before and dharma and yajna after. And if you just do the enjoyment part without this part before and after, that's Asuric behavior. It's a behavior not informed by scripture. And therefore, for me, Prabhupada's statement stands in its own right. It doesn't stand in the context of this being a comprehensive dealing with the subject matter of homosexuality.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't stand in terms of this section even talking about that whatsoever. It's talking about Visarga. At the same time, Prabhupada's statement, for me at least, when I read it, it's true. And that's a reality that one has to deal with. Okay, we can move to another subject matter, but I just wanted to say that for those who may be having a first person experience, it doesn't mean this is giving us clarity about what we should do with that sort of psychology.
Right.
Other than to understand that if there's this tendency for enjoyment without responsibility, it's demonic. And yes, it's true. If you happen to be heterosexual and you just want to enjoy without the responsibility before and after, it's also demonic. But there's a difference there also. The difference being that at a certain point, with that template, you can use your sex life for yajna and service to the humanity and service to the Supreme Lord. Where that may not be possible is not possible for, of course, they're going to get into we can adopt and all. That's a whole nother subject matter that I don't even talk about. So then there needs to be, well, what do I do with this? Even if you want to I don't mind calling it a demonic swabhava. Like for me, it's not a big issue, but I know some person may feel alienated to have that language attached to it. So we could just say swabhava, just in general. What do you do with it? Like, yes, I do have this tendency for enjoyment as all souls. This enjoyment doesn't really have a prescription for responsibility before and after, at least in the scriptures. So what do I do with that? And that for me is where a lot of the conversation around the subject matter may have to come up. For when you're dealing with the devotee youth who are coming up, discovering this, like what responsibility do I take? Like I can't change the swabhava. Back to Kaliya's prayers, it's there. It's very difficult to give up. It's not going to just go away. You can't pray the gay away, or all of this stuff is not going to work. So it's there. How do I deal with it in the most healthy way? I have my suggestions later, but that's really the question that I'm sure would be interesting for someone who can come to accept the veracity of the things that Prabhupada says on this subject matter, but at the same time, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So what do I do with that?
That's really good. Two things. One is a housekeeping. Do you want more hot water in there?
I'm good for now.
Toast, can I have some more hot water, please? Thank you. Second was, so we've established, where Prabhupada said that in the Bhagavatam. There's
another place that should be brought up is his letters and so on.
Yes.
So my point here, and there may be disagreement, whatever, but my point was that our Shastras are silent on the issue by and large. That's just that's just what it is.
Yeah.
So having said that, our Charya is not silent about the issue. So this is another place where the devotees who are like mailing us is saying like, don't talk about this subject matter and so on. I was like, unfortunately, our Acharya has talked about this subject matter. Not unfortunately, that was a poor choice of words, but he has talked about it.
Yeah.
So you have to deal with it. Prabhupada is the only Acharya that I know, maybe Srila Bhaktisiddhanta also, who gave a lot of social commentary in his Bhagavatam. No other acharya before him dealt with social issues whatsoever. He's the first to deal with that.
Yeah.
And so as his followers, we do have a responsibility to engage with Prabhupada's social commentary, to understand Prabhupada's perspective, and quite frankly, to represent his perspective on the issue if we're representing ISKCON. And if you have some other idea, then you should also represent it as your idea. Like, just to be intellectually responsible. Like, this is what our acharya says about this issue. And I have my own realizations or whatever. Just like make that clear distinction. But if we're going to be part of ISKCON, part of Prabhupada's movement, we have the responsibility of representing his view on these things, like really trying to understand them, which is difficult for us because, like I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, we've been socialized in a very particular way that makes us very like, everything's okay, it's all about love and compassion, acceptance, and that narrative just doesn't really go along with what Prabhupada said about the issue. So that means we're going to have to work doubly hard to really try to understand Prabhupada's perspective, the logic that led him to that perspective. And then when we're giving classes, we're talking about it as a representative of Prabhupada's movement. Like, for example, if we're sitting on the Vyasa-san, to represent what Prabhupada said on that movement. Now, we can put in all the qualifiers and all that we feel we need to make it digestible and all that, but make sure that we're representing his point.
Yeah, thank you.
So Prabhupada has said a lot about this. I wouldn't say a lot, but he said, I mean, you can type it into Google and I found one document that gather all the statements together in one spot about this. It took me a really long time to read it. It's like super long.
You put it together?
I didn't put it together. Some other devotees did.
You know there's that group Galva?
Yeah,
Have you ever interacted with anyone from there?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I don't really know anyone from there.
Right. There's one devotee in there.
I know the devotee who started it.
Yeah,
I see
yeah.
him comments here and there.
I was thinking to have him on.
In this. Yeah, that would be.
Like, I'm kind of like exploring video conferencing.
Okay.
Anyway, that's a side point. But yeah, I'd like to have that devotee on if he's.
Yeah, I'm sure he might have a different perspective that he can lend to this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, Prabhupada said a lot on this thing, and he's been very consistent. So even if you want to think that the devotees are like cherry picking statement, the thing is they can cherry pick from any place and it will practically be the same statement. Right. That's how consistent Prabhupada is on this particular issue. What I found interesting about the Prabhupada's consistency on the issue is that he's mostly always used the word homosex.
Homosex, yeah.
Which for me is the behavior. You know, like the sex part, that's a certain behavior. And I do make a distinction between homosexuality, again, the psychological condition, versus the behavior. Now, obviously, they're related. If you have a certain psychological conditioning, there's a certain psychological inevitability that leads to a certain type of behavior, for sure. At the same time, the two are different, and you can control your behaviors. And so therefore, when the devotees say it's a choice, that's true when you're talking about the behaviors, but it's not true when you're talking about the attraction. That attraction is congenital. It comes with the type of body you get at the very beginning of life. And how do you know that? Well, you can take the word for persons having first-person experience. You can take their word for it. And you can use your common sense to say that if they could choose not to be attracted in that way, they probably would choose that because of the isolation it creates, the embarrassment that it creates, the shame that it creates. You can literally end up losing family members. I know really horrible stories of devotees who have committed suicide after telling their mom, and their mom calling them demons and shit, and then the devotee committing suicide. There are many horror stories like this. Well, I don't want to say many. I don't want to convey like it's like an epidemic or something, but there are quite a few stories like this that I'm aware of, having done zero research about it, like these sorts of stories. Yeah. So, so then that's a issue. But the point is that there is a distinction between the sexuality, just the conditioning, but you have no control over, and the actual behavior that you can engage in. You can control that. And I think that's where the distinction wasn't really made for Prabhupada. When I've read these sorts of topics in other literatures in the past, it doesn't seem that distinction was taken very seriously. That you can have a certain psychological attraction that's different from the behavior. So for them, when they're talking about homosexuality, it's just the behavior part. And I think that kind of also speaks to the fact that when people bring up the subject matter, they're usually only preoccupied with the sex part. Like, they don't care about the other parts of what a homosexual relationship might be. Not that they should care about it, by the way. But it's not like about, like, for them it's not about the love part or the companionship, or for them it's just about the sex part, which kind of in some way speaks to how it's really thought of, and that they don't see the distinction. Unfortunately, there is an actual distinction where you're hanging out with the boys, playing basketball, playing sports, or whatever you're doing, and then all of a sudden you hit puberty, and mostly all your friends are getting attracted to the ladies, the cheerleaders in the squad or whatever, and you notice your attraction is going somewhere else. And I don't know how it works with females, but with males, we have a very clear compass that points us in a direction for attraction. I'm sorry. Oh, man. Okay, you could delete that part out if you want to.
I don't delete anything. This is an open thing, man.
So
say what you gotta say.
So it's clear, the attraction is clear.
Yeah.
Now, you can control your behavior, as I think many do try to do. Especially when you're a devotee, you will definitely try to. Not only are you dissimulating your attraction, but you're also making sure that you engage in behaviors that don't reveal yourself as it is, your conditioning, as it were. But there is a distinction there, and it seems to me, and I could be wrong about this, I'm not professing to be an authority or anything on this, but when Prabhupada talks about the subject matter in his letters, which are very consistent, his point is about stop this homosex. And cool, that makes sense to me too, because again, not only is sex life a problem, homosex is probably even more the case because it can't be used in yajna. So sex life is a problem. Nobody has a problem with that. So homosex is definitely a real problem, and that's something that you should stop. Problem is, I kind of got this swabhava. It's kind of like, it's just like sitting there, and I am chanting Hare Krishna, but it's like comfortably sitting there. That ain't really going anywhere. So what am I supposed to do with that? Yeah. Now you can say just stop it, but that's not a good that's not going to work for the vast majority of people. For example, like I mentioned this earlier, Prabhupada says some very savage things about sex life, and about just the normal heterosexual format. Hold on, it's my dad. Hey, Bo. Hey, Bo. I'm doing a podcast right now. I'll call you back. Yeah, thanks. Haribo. Love my dad. So yeah. So the point is, Prabhupada said many heavy things and quite funny things. I mentioned it earlier about it's just a urinal. You're attracted to a urinal, and all the statements that can be proved as objectively true. Problem is, I'm in Maya, and it's I'm attracted, and you can't stop your attraction just by being told stop it. Yeah. Like, you can hear from Prabhupada directly. You've heard from Prabhupada directly many times. Stop this nonsense. Still, we're not stopping. But somehow that's okay when it comes to the heterosexual template. That's like, you're fine. Yeah. Even though we know you got your hand in the cookie jar, it's totally okay. Yeah. So in the same way as a person with a heterosexual swabhava can't just stop, so also for the other guy with the homosexual swabhava, they're not going to be, for the most part, they may not be able to just stop. So what's the strategy for them? That is really the question that I have. What is the strategy for them? I remember when Do you have an answer for that? I have a suggestion. Okay. I don't call it as an answer per se. Okay. I remember when this came up with that same devotee in Chicago, it's a senior devotee. Yeah. When I brought the subject matter up with them, he told me that, for the homosexual swabhava, using different language, he said the method for them is the elevator method. Prabhupada speaks about the elevator versus the stair method in the Bhagavad Gita. If you can go up by the elevator method versus the stairs, then you will take the elevator. That's just intelligence. He said, so for them, there's the elevator method, and the context in which he was mentioning is that there is no varnashram prescription for them, so they can take the elevator method. And I kind of shot back. I was like, the elevator method means bhakti yoga, and that's for everybody. Yeah. And the staircase method in the context in which Prabhupada presents is like karma, again, yoga. So bhakti is supposed to be for everyone. So I said that doesn't really provide any clarity. He said, well, there should be immediate transcendence for those with the homosexual swabhava. I was like, immediate transcendence. Like, take off the glass. I was like, bro, really? I was like, I didn't say this, and I was definitely respectful. I try to be respectful to my seniors. I think it's a good practice.
Yes, for sure.
For maintaining your bhakti, but
For sure.
I was like, are you kidding me? Okay. Some people might take it like, no problem, we're gonna do that. But I'm like, how many people do you know can immediately transcend? Like immediately. That means like today one way, tomorrow the other way.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's not even a reasonable suggestion. It's not even reasonable. It's not even something that should be taken seriously.
Yeah.
So given that I understand that not only is sex life a problem, homosex is definitely a problem. Perhaps arguably more so because it can't be used in yagya. That wouldn't disturb me if someone argued that way. But it's there, and what is the strategy I am to accept with this? I don't know. There's obviously a clear strategy when you have the heterosexual swabhava. You get married, and then you have sex only for children. Which I'm sure everyone is really, doing that. They're really sticking it out, only having sex for children.
Only for children.
And if somehow or other they're magically not producing any children, even though they've been married for years and years and years and years. So there's a clarity about the strategy you can take with that.
Yeah.
And this is something I could get into later. I don't exactly believe in like there was this whole gay marriage thing and so on. I don't believe that's a good thing exactly. I have my reasons for that. We can get into that later. But obviously, if you have that sort of attraction, then you need a strategy. You need something to help tame it. One of the features of a marriage life, at least as I understand it traditionally, and I don't profess to be very learned in terms of what the marriage institution served for society traditionally, but one of the understandings that I have of it is that it's to help tame the beast. Particularly with the sexual defect in males, is that they have a tendency for promiscuity. Of course, everyone today it's all mixed up. It's a quite promiscuous culture. But the sexual defect of males is a tendency for, as they like to say, spread their seed everywhere. The female sexual defect is, and we're not describing this now because you can't really say any critique about women without being shut down, is that they have a hypergamous nature, which means they tend to always want to date or marry the alpha male. So they'll be with any one male at any given time, but it has to be the alpha male. So they can throw out one person and get the next person who has more status, more fame, and so on. Anyway, whether that's true or not, there'll be a lot of argument about that. We have our sexual defects. Males and females have their sexual defects.
Right.
And I understand the marriage institution, one of the functions that it serves is to help tame our defects in our sexuality. And so I'm answering the question, do I have an answer to that? I don't have an answer. I have a suggestion I have two suggestions. So I'm going to say my second suggestion really is that one can try out what they call as a partnership, because technically speaking, healthy grihastha relationship is largely platonic. If you're really,
it is, yeah.
If you're following it to the T,
yeah,
then it's largely platonic. There's sex for children only, and after that there's reading Bhagavatam together and going on parikrams together and really being a partnership for developing Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
So in principle, there's no reason why such a strategy couldn't be had within a partnership, one that's largely platonic, or at least moving that direction. You may not be able to follow that in the beginning. As I imagine, I don't know, but as I imagine, many heterosexual devotees probably have a hard time with just the platonic format of their marriage in the beginning.
It's called monogamous as well, right?
Monogamous, right? Monogamous.
Right.
But within monogamy also platonic, because monogamy,
platonic, yeah.
In the sort of normal demonic culture, I just want to throw it in there, is that you could have sex with your wife, or your wife can have sex with her as many times as you want. It doesn't matter. That's how they view it. But in our format, it's a lot different.
Right.
Maybe in older Western societies it was different also. I'm not so sure about that. So it's largely platonic, monogamy and largely platonic. So in a similar way, I don't like to use the word monogamy in terms of a homosexual relationship, because I think the word monogamous has they have like very specific terms that relates to heterosexual relationship, just linguistically and historically. So I don't want to exactly use that word, but basically a partnership, one person that you're having, either a platonic relationship with, or you're moving in that direction, trying to harness sex life, and having a partnership for the purpose of the development of Christian consciousness. Now, there's nothing within our philosophy to suggest that would be a bad suggestion.
Right.
It's probably as much an undercoupon as any other relationship, like a blind well that you don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
But that's a suggestion. Otherwise, you can get married also to a woman. I don't know how sagacious that is, because I know many devotees who've tried that strategy and they ruined their lives, and they ruined the lives of another entity, their wives, namely, and sometimes their children also. So I don't know if that's a safe strategy. If you can come to understand that you are conditioned a particular way, and then there's a sort of psychological inevitability that can take place in the future, that might be a dangerous strategy. And of course, this is for persons who have to get married, who realize that might have to happen.
For your first suggestion, I heard something. I read something online. I have to find it, but it was like one of Prabhupada's servants who's now, deceased, Upendra.
Yes.
Have you heard that?
I heard this.
So Prabhupada said, so he was gay, and he was Prabhupada's servant. I mean, a lot of Prabhupada's, not a lot, a number of Prabhupada's leading disciples during his time were gay.
Right. Not dropping the names, but they were some big names.
But yeah, people don't know. People don't know that. And the way Prabhupada dealt with it was, different, like the persona, the Acharya persona, and the person.
Right.
That Prabhupada was. So this kind of illustrates what he was as a person.
Right.
That, okay, this devotee said, I don't know what to do. I'm gay, and it's.
As I heard it, I can't stay in the brahmacharya ashram. Like, it's not
right. I can't stay in the brahmacharya. Brahmacharya means monk. He wasn't able to be a monk. So Prabhupada said, and this is paraphrasing, just live with one boy and practice Krishna consciousness.
Find one nice boy and chant Hare Krishna.
Yeah. It's saying be in a monogamous relationship as a gay person, and practice bhakti, Krishna consciousness to elevate yourself.
Right.
Like anyone else would do.
Right.
Like that's the same advice Prabhupada would give to someone who said, I can't be a brahmachari, but who's heterosexual.
Right.
Okay, find a nice lady and marry her, make her your wife, and be in a marriage and practice Krishna consciousness and chant Hare Krishna.
Right. I heard a similar story just yesterday from a Prabhupada disciple telling me how apparently there was a transgender devotee, Prabhupada disciple, and was kind of sometimes presenting as a man, sometimes presenting as a woman, and they wanted initiation. So this Prabhupada disciple told me just yesterday, actually, that Prabhupada said that choose one, decide, choose one and stick to it, and I'll initiate you tomorrow. Now,
oh my gosh,
so
really?
yeah, this Prabhupada disciple was telling this story, which and again, all these stories help to convey that there's Prabhupada's Acharya side, the side that we hear in the books especially, and maybe in his room conversation. Now we're really hearing the Acharya, and then you have Prabhupada's this persona is more understanding, practical, accommodating, not in terms of an ideology, he's going to stick to his points when he's the Acharya. Basically, my disciple is conditioned this way, I get it, and giving a certain sort of direction or guidance because of that. So I mean, this transgender one is that one is super far out, because it's kind of, I don't want to say funny, it's a laughable situation, but Prabhupada was very practical. Choose one,
practical, stick to it.
Now the only problem with these stories is that you're not going to find them in folio anywhere.
No, you won't.
And that's a difficult, when you look up homosex and folio, boom, you find all the Prabhupada statements. You look up the story from Upendra that we heard from some Prabhupada disciples, even if they're in good standing, the tendency for the third party perspective is to dismiss that.
Yes.
And you've just made those stories up.
Yeah.
And a sort of incredulity and accepting that Prabhupada could have such an understanding side. In other words, that the third party perspective, I really represent Prabhupada, not only in terms of his acharyaship, but also in terms of his personality. And I know for a fact he would not be at all accepting of this and so on. And therefore, they become incredulous. Like, no way Prabhupada would be so really kind and understanding. And although I think we have plenty of stories to demonstrate that when Prabhupada was dealing with people personally, he had a different persona, not duplicitous, but it was different. Like when we hear about Dr. Mishra, they would fight and argue about Mayavadi. This is when Prabhupada first came to New York, fighting like anything. Probably they would call him fool and rascal. I'm sure all these things would come up. But then when he got sick, Prabhupada was taking care, nursing him back to health, saying that he's a very dear friend, and this other side of Prabhupada, which is a side that people don't seem to want to. Well, by people I mean the third party perspective, doesn't really want to concede that there could be such an understanding when dealing with the Swabhava. Of course, the first party perspective, we would like to jump on those examples also and disregard what Prabhupada said on the other side. And so both parties tend to be a little bit unbalanced in there.
I also want to make it clear on the other hand that it's not that there's no place for that all the third party people are speaking in the way like that, there's no place for them and this and that. There are gurus, there are devotees, senior devotees who are able to accommodate
for sure
LGBT devotees and people are happy with under their shelter, etc. So I think there is a place, there is progressive and things going on to accommodate, but I would say that the majority conclusion, or not the conclusion, the majority is that is not talked about very much.
Right. I would 100% agree with you. I would even say, and I tried to make this clear, that I don't even mean to convey that the third party perspective is wrong.
Oh yeah, I know that. Yeah, right.
But
you said that, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure there are people with third party perspectives that are very accommodating. I also suspect that their ability to be accommodating has to happen on a one-to-one basis. It would be very hard, or at least at the present point, impossible to make a public statement about it. Because of how surcharged these sort of social topics are in ISKCON in the world today and so on. And I kind of see that's what a guru is there for. Nowadays the guruship is to be done, and this is totally another topic, but the way we kind of practice the guru-disciple relationship in ISKCON is like a public affair. Which I guess has its benefits. I can't really think of any right off the top of my head, but I guess it has its benefits, but I think it also has its problems.
Wait, like what? Like what?
Problems? Like the guru not...
What do you mean public affair? Like
you get
initiation in public?
In public, And the guru is having to oblige your disciples to chant a certain number of rounds. Why can't the guru have the liberty? And this is just an abstract philosophical question. I'm not trying to start a social movement or say anything like that. I'm just saying, why does the guru have the liberty? I used to like to say this a lot. Why doesn't the guru have the liberty to be guru? And the guru means that they have the right, literally, over their disciple. If the disciple is really a shishya means one who is prepared to be disciplined. So they have the right over their disciple to give the guidance they deem fit for the progress of that individual disciple.
A specific person at that time.
But no, you have to, there's a uniform cookie cutter format. And again, we're part of an institution. There's a history that makes the institution want to move in a certain way when it comes to these sorts of sensitive topics like gurus and the level of power that they have over their disciples and so on. I get that, but as a general philosophical point, the guru should have the ability to be guru with his disciple, and with an issue like this, to give individual guidance, like, okay, do like this, do like that, do like that. Understanding the disciple is taking shelter and giving individual. And I suspect this probably happens, not in the public.
Yes. I think so as well.
And back doors. And I think that's probably the hard part for persons having a first-person experience, that there isn't any public, you don't hear this side of the situation publicly, but you do hear a lot of the other side publicly, the disparaging, and then it just creates a feeling of isolation and being just like an alien, a freak, and so on. And that's the part that's difficult, and I obviously certainly get that. What to do? It's kind of the hand that one has been dealt this life.
Why don't you agree with gay marriage?
Again, because I just as a principle, I haven't deeply researched it, but I suspect that most of our youth has not researched what was the purpose of the marriage institution. Because of watching way too many movies and too many YouTube web series, crap, all of these things helped, again, they help to socialize us in a particular way. And one of the ways that this whole marriage topic, I think the way we've been socialized to think about it is that it was about love. That marriage was primarily about the love that you felt for another person. So when it comes to discussing like something like gay marriage, for at least a lot of our youth, when we think about it, it's really about the love that you feel for another person.
Yeah.
And so if you love this person, then what's the problem?
Yeah.
But I don't understand, older traditions viewed love as at least of paramount importance in deciding a relationship. It was more of a duty to the society and ultimately a duty to God. So I like to articulate it as you have two very different paradigms that view love and dharma in an inverse position. So in the modern paradigm, love is at the top and duties fall as a secondary thing that kind of follows the love. But in the older societies, it's inverted or reversed, where dharma is at the top and their affection comes out of that, out of the dharma sacrifice that you make for the other party.
Yeah.
I don't know, I have a really mundane example of this, but
kind of like arranged marriage.
yeah, arranged marriage will fall into this category also.
Yeah, but tell me yours.
No, it's a silly example, but I think it's a good one.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever saw, this is kind of embarrassing. What is that movie called? Hunger Games.
Oh, I love Hunger Games. Oh my god. What's her name?
I forgot her name, but what's the actress name? Yeah, Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Nice.
I really like. That's one of the only movies that I've seen more than one time because I thought it was such a good movie.
She's great. She's a great actress.
But what I like about that movie is the how the relationship between her and Pita,
yeah.
how their relationship developed. So she wasn't really into him in the first one.
Yes.
And by the second one, she like falls in love with him.
Yeah.
But because they were fighting to keep each other alive.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because she kind of has some sort of romantic relationship with this other guy.
That dude.
Gail or whatever his name was.
Right.
So she kind of was into him.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like very deep. And she wasn't into Pita at all. But then in the second one, when they had to go back to the Hunger Games unfairly, because this whole politics was made.
Yeah.
And her whole concern was about Pita. Like, he was always looking out for her.
Yes.
And then when it got to they were in the game, and I think there's this one scene where he hits the force field, and he almost has a heart attack and die.
Yeah.
And one of their allies comes and rescues him, and then it's very clear that she's like really into him now.
Yeah.
She's feeling like, how could she live without him? And later on in the second one, she tells him that, and then she like ends up actually falling in love with him in the third and fourth one. And I thought that was like a more realistic picture of a romantic relationship. It's not totally realistic because of it's Hunger Games, but
Yeah.
but in terms of that, their relationship was based on kind of making a sacrifice for each other. And out of that sacrifice was born this genuine, kind of very profound affection.
Yes.
Versus these other sort of stuff that we see, which is a general thing that we see, is where characters like they fall in love. It's like this epic moment where the leaves are falling, that slow music comes in just at the right time to create that experience. Like, wow, this is epic. They really, really love each other.
Yeah.
And then by the next season, they're breaking up and hooking up with someone else.
Yeah.
And then the third season, they're breaking up with that one and hooking up with someone else.
Yeah.
So love is, I consider, like a very important thing in our modern culture, where I don't think it had the same level of esteem in older cultures. And older culture was about sacrifice and duty. And then out of that, you develop genuine affection for the person. So what I understand marriage institution to fall in this older paradigm. And I think in our modern time, because we've been socialized in a particular way, we don't really appreciate or really frankly understand the function of marriage in terms of its function in relationship to society and to God. We just really think it's about love because we've watched way too many movies. And literally, that's really the basis of it. We've watched way too many movies and we've never talked about or really heard about marriage being anything other than something about love. And therefore, when you think only about love, then you love whoever you love. So if someone loves their partner, if a gay person loves their partner, then let them get married. It's about love. But in older societies, I don't think that would have that's not going to fly, because it wasn't about love. It wasn't about, no one gives a damn about who you love. We want to know, I think, and this is intuitive because I haven't studied about marriage, and I suspect people who have strong feelings about this, who may be hearing what I'm saying, they also haven't studied about it. So don't even try to, front like you looked into it real deeply or anything like that. Like, don't even try to front, but just, this is intuitive based on my understanding from reading Gita and Bhagavatam.
Yeah. Can I have a granola bar?
Yeah.
Please, I'm really hungry.
So you have the marriage institution is really primarily about, I kind of understand it to be primarily about children.
Right.
Because why would a society care about if you're getting married or not? Because they want you to produce children that can continue the society in the next generation.
Yeah.
So they're primarily interested in having children. And why would they be concerned about marriage? Because I guess the understanding would be within marriage institution, you can produce a healthy child. Now, we're going to have a really hard time presenting that argument today because families are just so jacked up that you may have a hard time presenting this as an argument. But children grow up in the most healthy way when there are two parents in the house. And I think that too, of a mother and a father. They grow up in the most healthy way. And that way you guarantee that you're producing good children for the continuation of your society. So a society would not care about who you love. They care about your contribution to the society, to its continuation in the form of children, and their marriage to ensure that the children are growing up healthy. I'm sure there are more factors there. There are like the legal factors, which I think people would be preoccupied with in modern times. There are all these legal things but I'm talking about just like basic principles that I view marriage as being for children and for the continuation of health.
Wait, do you want one?
No, I'm good.
Sure.
I'll have some more tea though. Thank you. And so I don't want to say I'm against gay marriage. I just don't see it as serving the actual purpose of the marriage institution as I understand it now. Obviously, someone may want to edify me on what is the actual purpose of marriage and try to convince me that marriage is about, it really is about love and not about...
Tulsi was saying the law stuff as well?
Yeah, legal stuff.
Legal, yeah.
If you see, there'd be many sob stories you can find them on YouTube, I'm sure, where a gay couple, one of the couples gets into an accident and they go to the hospital and they're not allowed to enter the hospital because they're not family. And then if that person dies, then all the money just goes back to their family, it doesn't go to their partner. Right. Because, there's a sort of legal element to marriage institution itself. And so I guess in modern times when they're fighting for marriage, then they're interested in all these factors, also kind of the legal factors, that's kind of another thing. For me, that's not really here or there. I'm trying to look at it at a more principle-based level. I'm trying to understand the principle. And just frankly speaking, if I were to ask you even, what is the purpose of the marriage institution? How do you even understand it? I mean, or do you think that you've understood it deeply or have a deep understanding of its function?
Definitely my idea was to produce children. But also...
I can hear the showing of the thing.
Sorry. I'm sure people are listening to that. What was the question again?
How do you understand the marriage institution?
How do I understand it?
Yeah, what is the purpose of the marriage institution?
Well, it's because I'm not meant to be a brahmachari. I'm not meant to be a monk. So, how I've been raised by my parents, who have been married for 40 plus years. Yeah. That's what you do. You get married and...
Okay, so it's not very deep.
No, it's not very deep. I'm not a very deep person.
No, you are a very deep person. I'm just saying, my feeling about it is that we've been socialized in a particular way, that we don't really have a deep understanding of what the function of these institutions were in all cultures.
I would agree, yeah.
And therefore, we just take it for granted that it's about... Hey, Mikkel is outside. We take it for granted that it's about love, and it's about, these sort of what I view as more superficial elements. Yeah. And we don't really have a deep understanding of that. And therefore, we feel that we need to change the way marriage institution is. It shouldn't be about these things. And we want to change it without actually understanding why it was there in the first place and what role does it really serve. I think it serves more than just having children. There are a lot more things to the marriage institution and how it helps maintain a healthy social integrity that we just have no awareness of because it's not really taught to us. And whatever we really understand about is coming from movies, so we're not very deep. Even when I'm presenting, it's not a very deep understanding of the institution. It's more of an intuitive understanding of the institution based on reading the Bhagavatam and Gita and so on. And therefore, I don't see how the gay marriage would fall into that.
Right.
And so I can't say I agree with that. But as far as a strategy is concerned with dealing with the Swabhava, yeah, partnership. Harness your sex drive, moving towards a more platonic relationship for the purpose of developing Krishna consciousness. Like, obviously, you develop bhakti by bhakti. Bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya vibrat utpulukamtanum, that you, from bhakti comes. So you don't develop bhakti just by following religious principles. Religious principles is like, just by following the four regular principles, you develop bhakti. No, you develop bhakti by performing the angas of bhakti.
Right.
And you may have so many conditions or defects of your swabhava that are there. The prescription's still going to be exactly the same. The prescription is develop bhakti by performing the angas of bhakti. Now you figure out the strategy you need to take to help harness your nature so that it doesn't distract from your application of the angas of bhakti. And then as you're advancing, as you attain higher stages of bhakti from anarshana vritti to nishta and so on, then naturally the defects of your swabhava will go away and your absorption will come increasingly on Krishna. That's a strategy that's for everybody. And that's something that really, that's the beauty of the message of bhakti, it's universality. Yeah. And the part that we probably would want to communicate, at least if we're communicating that there's a house, Prabhupada has a house that everyone can live in. Yeah. So what is that house? That house is that spiritual conception, that universality of bhakti. Perform bhakti to the Supreme Lord. You're a demon. You can also do bhakti. You're a sadhu. You can also do bhakti. You're a freaking elephant. You can also do bhakti. Yeah. Right? There are so many verses. Bhakti tutosha bhagavan gaja yutapaya. Krishna is satisfied by bhakti. And the example, Gaja Yutapaya, an elephant, has performed bhakti. Even Bharat Maharaj, when he was in the body of a deer. Right. You may not remember this. I certainly remember until I was reading the commentary. But he began chanting the holy name of Krishna in a deer body. Wow. Because of the samskars of his life of Bhav previously. So a deer can do bhakti. And there are many statements like this in the Bhagavatam that even the birds and the beasts, I can't remember the Sanskrit on it. Even the birds and beasts, they can also do this bhakti. So that's, of course, the universality of bhakti. So you may be conditioned that way or this way. And that's probably the message we want to offer. And then when we're talking about strategies for dealing with swabhavas, a strategy that emphasizes the absorption in bhakti and the increasing absorption in bhajan. What is that verse? Bhakti.
What's the verse?
Bhakti paresho
Baba Bhakti Ranyatrasya. Yeah. Love that. I love that verse. I love that verse. That's one of my favorite verses, but only the first line.
It's a very powerful verse. Prabhupada's fond of quoting the first line also. And the commentary comes in that verse, which is very nice. Yeah. Just like if you take a little grain, because the verse says you get bhakti, paresha anubhava, realization of God, and detachment from matter, in the same way that you get nourishment, satisfaction, and freedom from hunger for every bite that you eat. So Sri Vishnu offers a very simple commentary that if you take a little grain, then you get a little nourishment, a little satisfaction, and a little freedom from hunger. And if you take full grain, then you get full nourishment, full satisfaction, and complete freedom from hunger. Of course, it says this is a defect of the analogy because you never give up the hunger for more and more bhakti. Yes. So that's a defect in the analogy. So the point is that you have to increase your bhajan to deal with whatever defects you have in your swabhava or upadi. And that's a universal message. And everyone can get on board that message. Take shelter of more and more bhakti, and whatever defect is there that's causing the obstacle to your attainment of higher levels of bhakti will be destroyed by the performance of bhakti. But this sort of message where it's like you have to give up this sort of nature first before you can. I don't think anyone actually does say it like that, but it kind of communicates this idea that unless you're like this first, then you're not going to really be able to grow healthily.
Do people say? I don't know if anyone says that.
They don't say it directly like that, but they communicate that.
That's a complete philosophical flaw, isn't it?
Bro, we in ISKCON, like we're not foreign to philosophical flaws.
True.
Not trying to be shady or anything, but we're not. It's not a foreign thing living in our family. So anyway, if they don't do it intentionally, it happens inadvertently. That you communicate this idea that, you know, perfection in bhakti is predicated on fixing the defects of your swabhava, like almost as if independently. Whereas our message is by increasing your
as you are, come as you are.
Come as you are, and take shelter of Krishna and increase your bhajan. And that is the categorical imperative, using this language, for everybody, no matter what position you're in. And kind of, if we would emphasize that, it would be easier to, if we emphasize that, we convey the universal message of devotion quite effectively. But when it comes to these sort of social issues, we tend to get too much in the first, second, or third party perspectives without looking at the turiya, without looking really at the transcendental perspective that can help kind of reconcile all these sorts of things.
Do you think it's important that ISKCON makes any official statement? But now that I'm talking to you, I feel like it's not that important.
Yeah.
You know why?
Why?
Because if we're just going to be about following Krishna consciousness and elevating our consciousness, all these other things, like these designations, they don't really mean, they don't have anything to do with.
Right.
I guess where it becomes tricky is when people want to serve and some people are not, like when it comes to like what you were asking that senior devotee, you know,
right.
Can they be initiated? Can they go on the altar? Can they do service? This and that.
Right.
I guess it does have. I guess it is important.
I personally can't say conclusively if it's important. I don't know how I really feel about that, but I do feel that if our leaders, especially, of course, our GBC persons and temple presidents and, you know, preachers, and if they really understand the tattva of Krishna consciousness, it may not be such a big defect that we haven't made a personal statement about it. Because people coming into our communities will be feeling and understanding Bhakti's universality, Bhakti's applicability no matter what situation that I'm in. That won't even be a concern for them.
Yeah.
The only thing is that, like I said, it does, because it comes up periodically in Prabhupada's purports, or else, you know, someone's asking a question because they're watching a lot of YouTube videos, and so they're, well, what do you think about this, or what did you think about that? And so if our devotees aren't really deeply absorbed in the Shastra and trying to really give a Shastric spin to dealing with these sorts of things, then you might end up conveying either something that's completely quote-unquote inclusive, like artificially inclusive, in the name of being compassionate and loving and all that, or you end up saying something that's very alienating in the name of representing pure Krishna conscious Siddhanta, without just saying, you need to increase your bhajan. All upadis are problematic. Some upadis may be more problematic than other upadis in terms of your practical life. I don't think you can just count that, you know. And I wouldn't, for me, if like someone said, well, this is more demonic than that, I'm like, yeah, but it's there. So now what do I do with it? Yeah. Increase your bhajan. If our devotees are very much absorbed in the siddhanta of Krishna consciousness, then I don't think the need becomes that important. Especially because although we have a sort of, it's kind of, as I guess understand, it's becoming a lot centralized, like a GBC, and they have laws that, but basically every temple more or less has a lot of autonomy. Oh, of course. In terms of what they're doing, how they're running, and so on. Yeah. So if people were coming into our communities where the leaders really understand the message and they live it in terms of how they interact with people, then it won't be that much of a necessity, because people anyway feel loved, they feel cared about. Yeah. It's not going to even be a big deal for them. But if they have to endure communities where you're like being demoralizing rhetoric is being told in the name of pure Krishna conscious Siddhanta, where the Krishna conscious conclusion is not at all discussed, it's just a sort of social perspective that may have its truth to it also. I don't want to discount that. But then you just alienate some people and they go away. They feel like, you know, well, there's no place for me here, so let me go to the material world, which happens to a lot of people, frankly speaking. At least those that I know. It's unfortunate. I know.
I think that's really comprehensive, really great, really awesome stuff. Again, if people want to find you on social media and
Yeah, I'm at Urban Sage Deliberates. That's my Instagram. I have a Facebook, Jaya Jagannath Das. There's probably a lot of those in there.
yeah.
But I spell it with 2 capital J's and Jaya Jagannath right next to each other.
Okay, no space in between.
Yeah, but I'm probably going to shut down my Facebook soon.
Why?
Because I'm following your example.
Yeah, I've been.
But also I want to open up like an Urban Sage Deliberates Facebook page.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I'm just really wanting to kind of retract from technology. I view technology as extremely problematic for the growth of Christian consciousness, like a healthy Christian consciousness.
Definitely, I agree with that. I go on Tulsi's now and then to like if someone's like, oh my God, did you see that thread? And I was like, which thread? Make sure is Tulsi friends with that? And so, I get made fun of it for. Anyways, I don't care though. I'm not coming back. Life has been so busy, and to add Facebook to it is just like another not needed thing, you know, kind of like.
I've started to get into social media a little bit more, producing hopefully what I view as meaningful content. And
do you have a YouTube page?
I have a YouTube page, Urban Sage Deliberates also, but
Okay.
I haven't really done anything on it yet. I give my Bhagavad Gita classes on there.
Yeah.
I post them on there that I give at the Bhakti Center.
Yeah.
But 2019 is the year of putting out YouTube content. That's
Good,
my resolution.
good. You should do it, man. You should start podcasting, and
I'm getting excited to try it. 2019 is going to be the year for this for sure.
Awesome.
It's one of my resolutions for the year.
I think a lot of devotees appreciate what you're saying. The older devotees and young devotees.
I hope so. And if you don't, don't come after me.
Listen, let's all be nice, okay? We're just trying to do the best we can.
That's right.
We're not trying to attack anyone, and I think this was a great conversation about it.
Likewise.
I want to do another one for book edits.
Yeah, I really don't know if I'm the one for that one.
Why?
Just because I haven't.
Your body language just changed.
I know, because I'm like all nervous and stuff now.
No, it just comes after watching that video that.
Right. So I saw the one that you sent me. I thought the points that were made are very good.
Yeah.
It seems it would be really cool if we could get the 2 contending parties on here to discuss it.
That would be cool.
Just to
Maybe I should do that
devotees.
somehow.
That way, and they're just like more informed about the issues and.
For those who don't know, the issue is Srila Prabhupada's books have been edited. Not just grammar and spelling and whatnot, but actually things have been omitted and changed and stuff. And I always thought of myself on the side of, those devotees know what they're doing, and
Same.
there's, it's good. But a new video came across of a discussion between 2 Prabhupada disciples, one who was involved in that whole thing, and he was saying that's not the case, and there needs to be something more scholarly, maybe footnotes or whatnot, but don't change the content to feel to make it that Prabhupada's being consistent with its thoughts and all that stuff. And I was just like, I did a complete 180, man. I was just like, 1972 Gita, man.
Oh my God. Well, for me, with that sort of subject matter, I'm not fully informed. I thought those points were very good.
Yeah.
Considering. For me, I think when devotees get into like the purity of what Prabhupada said has been completely obscured
right.
or obfuscated by the book changes, and therefore, there was a statement made in that video also where one disciple of Prabhupada said, I just hear the lectures now. I don't even read the books because they've been like so much changed.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
So exactly, for me, I've always thought devotees who were like for the 1972, they were like kind of super fanatic on that, as if the purity of the message is somehow completely obscured and can make no devotees and it was even brought up, well, they're still making so many devotees with the books, and that one Prabhupada disciple was like, well, if you look at the quality of devotee, I was like, oh,
They're all Hindus or something. I think that's what he said.
Yeah, well, he was here to type, but he was also just saying generally, if you look at the quality of the devotee that's coming, it's not very, very good. And I was like, whoa, you lucky I'm trying to practice Vaishnavism.
Anyway, I'll link that video. I'll link that video to this.
But
I liked the video, honestly.
Yeah, I thought it was a great video also. I think it would be just in the future if I come back and have more. I really want to get into topics I really want to talk about men's issues.
Okay, yeah, right. I remember you saying
Specifically,
that.
I like to open up the topic about pornography.
Right.
Which is a huge huge problem.
Right.
Amongst the world today, men in general, but
Yeah.
amongst our devotee constituency. So that would be something I've been doing a lot of research on and really preoccupied with in terms of the men's sanghas that I'm creating in the Bhakti Center.
Super.
So I would have more confidence in sharing something in that category.
Jai Jagannath Prabhu, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Get in contact with Jai Jagannath Prabhu. He's a great person, great devotee, amazing soul. Why are you laughing?
Because I'm acting a fool.
Urban Sage Deliberates on Instagram and Jai Jagannath Das on Facebook. We'll do this again. Gaurachandra's on the other side here, laughing. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a good day.